The sun had barely touched the horizon when Daniel's alarm rang. It was 4:30 a.m. The world outside was still dark and silent. Most people were curled under blankets, deep in dreams. But Daniel wasn't like most people. He sat up, rubbed his eyes, and reached for the small notebook on his nightstand. Inside, each page was filled with neatly written goals, habits, and progress notes. Every day for the past 5 years, he had tracked his life with precision, workouts, meals, reading, meditation, even the time spent thinking. Today, like every other day, he slipped into his running shoes, tied them tight, and stepped into the cold morning air. There were no cameras, no audience, no applause, just the sound of his footsteps echoing in the empty streets. People often wondered why he bothered. He wasn't training for a marathon, nor was he an athlete trying to make a comeback. There was no big competition ahead. In fact, no one had even asked him to do any of this, but Daniel had learned something years ago. During one of the lowest points of his life, discipline isn't about what you do when people are watching. It's about what you do when they aren't. 5 years earlier, Daniel's life had been messy. He was overweight, unmotivated, and constantly making excuses. He'd show up late to work, binge-watch TV for hours, and leave important tasks unfinished. It wasn't laziness, he told himself, it was bad luck or lack of opportunities. But deep down, he knew the truth. He had no discipline. Then came the turning point. One rainy night, Daniel was scrolling through his phone when he stumbled upon an old video of himself in college. He was giving a speech full of energy, confidence, and hope. He barely recognized that version of himself. The smile, the spark in his eyes, it was all gone. That night he made a quiet decision, no big announcement, no social media post, just a private promise. From now on, I will be the kind of man who keeps his word to himself. The next morning, he woke up early, went for a short jog, and wrote his goals in a notebook. The jog lasted only 10 minutes, but it was a start. From there, the habits began to stack. 10 minutes became 30. Reading one page became finishing a book a week. Skipping junk food once a day became eating clean almost all the time. At first, no one noticed. Friends still invited him to late-night parties. Coworkers still laughed when he brought healthy lunches. Some even said, "Why are you working so hard? No one's paying you for this." But Daniel didn't care, because he understood something most people didn't. Discipline is a private battle. It's fought in the quiet moments when no one is watching, when it would be easier to quit. There were days when it was unbearably hard. Days when he woke up sore, tired, and uninspired. Days when rain pounded the pavement and every cell in his body screamed to go back to bed. But each time, he remembered his promise. One winter morning, he woke up to a snowstorm. The streets were empty, the cold biting into his skin. It would have been easy to skip the run. After all, who would know? But that was the point. No one would know except him, and that was enough. Over time, his discipline began to shape every part of his life. At work, he became the one people could depend on. At home, he was calmer, more patient, more present. His health improved. His energy skyrocketed. And without even trying to inspire others, he became a quiet example of what consistency could do. 2 years into his journey, something interesting happened. His boss called him in and offered him a leadership role. "We've been watching you," the boss said. "You don't just show up. You show up every single day. That's rare." Daniel accepted, not because he wanted the title, but because it proved something he'd always believed: the work you do in the dark will always find its way into the light. Now, 5 years later, Daniel still starts his mornings the same way. The habits have become second nature. The discipline is no longer something he forces, it's who he is. He knows that when the crowd is gone, when the lights are off, and when the world isn't clapping, that's when true character is revealed. That's when greatness is built. And if you asked him what his secret was, he'd probably smile and say, "There's no secret. I just keep the promises I make to myself every single day, even when no one's watching." Because Daniel knows what most people don't. Success isn't a single big moment. It's 1,000 small moments stacked quietly, day after day. In the unseen hours of your life, And when those unseen hours are filled with discipline, the results are inevitable.